Bienvenidos, señores y señores, to another episode of the Bleed Lows Podcast. This episode of the Bleed Lows Podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline remains your number one source for all your college basketball betting this season. Get analysis of every play, prop, or point at BetOnline. You're going to find the latest odds, bracket contests, team matchups, and game trends at BetOnline. Updated odds for everything from live games, the conference championships, right through to the Final Four and championship game. BetOnline is your college basketball headquarters this season. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to sign up and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Be sure to use your promo code BELIEVE, B-L-E-A-V, to receive your bonus. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts. And joining us on the Carne Asada, we got a packed house here. Our regular hosts are off on assignment, so we have our lovely contributors who are friends of the Carne Asada joining us. And it's been a while since she's been on the show, but a lot of you guys will probably recognize this face. Elisa Hernandez, who is killing it on the NFL coverage. It's called El Snap. She gives you the bilingual coverage. So for those of you who are listening to the show and want that Spanish coverage, Elisa drives it. Not only that, Elisa is a Dodger Stadium in-host. I totally butchered. What is the title of that, Elisa?
It's Dodgers in Stadium host. You almost had it.
There we go. And then coming back to the show, we didn't scare him off. Cody Snavely, who writes for Dodgers Beat, who was just up on the show a couple of episodes ago. Cody on the East Coast joining us, providing that Dodger love over there. How you been, Cody?
I'm doing well. I just actually got back from LA. I went for opening weekend. Got back a couple days ago. We went there for about a week and a half. So still a little jet lagged, but it's a little hot over here compared to over the West Coast right now. I've seen the weather over there. So
it rained again.
So give me the update, Cody. How was it for you? Because you got the whole lights experience, right? Because you went that opening series. I got to get your opinion on these lights.
I definitely, when I bought the tickets originally, they didn't announce the drone shows yet. And I told my wife, I was like, Dodger Stadium fireworks are like known for being the best in the league. So I was like, I'm super hyped to see that. Then they said the drone show, and I said, all right, I guess it's an LA thing. They have to one up every other stadium, so they're going to do drones. I would say for the first one, it was pretty good. But I think because at the season's end, they said they're going to almost like quadruple the amount of drones they're using. So it looked like it only took over like the center field like area. I imagine by the end of the season, it'll probably take up most of the entire sky in the outfield. And I think the people that get to see those late year drone shows are going to be in for something good.
So what about the home run celebration where it literally turns into Club Ravine? What are your thoughts on that celebration?
I know there was a couple teams in the past that have done it. Like I know with Atlanta, when they change relievers, they basically black out the whole stadium. But I think seeing something like that in person, for like being a fan in that environment, it's like kind of puts you in a mood, especially with the home run lights when they flicker in the blue and the stadium gets a little dim. It was really awesome. I know they tweaked it because I was there opening day and they were a lot longer. And then the 2 games after, they were kind of shorter. So especially with the time, like the clock, I think it kind of ruins the moment a little bit because they're kind of like rushing through it to get the lights back on and then next pitch thrown. So, but when you're not thinking about it, it's still a nice thing that they added this year.
Yeah, I believe the Diamondbacks complained about it, and that's why the Dodgers had to do something about it. But let's go to the expert, and she can give us the behind the scenes on it. Elisa, I want to hear your thoughts both on this drone show and then the Club Ravine home run celebration.
So the drone show, it's pretty long, actually. That's one of the things I think that they're gonna shorten it as it goes on. It's pretty impressive though, like everything they're able to do, and the fans, I don't think they were really knowing what to expect. It's definitely a new take. I think we need to make it clear, like the fireworks shows are not gone. Like we actually have a fireworks show coming up this weekend for this homestand. So they're not gone. It's just mixed in with the drone show. Like the fireworks, again, as Cody said, like it's one of the more staples, one of the favorite things like to see. And as far as the lights dimming down, I like it. It definitely adds dramatic effect. They are shorter, so you're right about that. But I think what got me was I remember we played the Royals in KC and they had a similar dramatic light drop, and I thought it was so cool. Like they showed it on TV and I was like, wow, like that's so cool. It's so dramatic. And not saying that they took it from there, but adding it to our stadium with the backdrop that we have, that only we have, I think kind of adds to the blue heaven-esque that is Dodger Stadium, and kind of really, it makes you refocus, right? Because our fans, they be talking, or like, they're yelling, they're doing the wave. And I love our fans, but definitely when something happens, the roar of the crowd will get your attention. But then when those lights are flickering, you instantly just turn, right? And you're locked into what's happening. And so that kind of unity, I think, really helps bring added value to the game, especially with it being so much shorter now.
I haven't had a chance to experience it because all my games this year so far have been day games. So I have not been able.
Bring your blanket. It's been cold.
Yeah, that's what I hear. So I have not been able to see the club lights at Club Ravine. But all right, let's get right into it, guys. A disappointing road trip. I don't think any of us, babyface, last week had the Dodgers going 3-4 on this road trip. So I saw the panic on social media. Of course, everyone is convinced season's over. What's the point? Our only hope now is if Shohei can save us. But can you guys talk me off the ledge here? I want to start with you, Elisa. What was your biggest takeaway from that road trip and the Dodgers going 3-4 on it?
It was a little up and down. It was one of those things where it's like, oh, that's the Dodgers I expect. And then it's just like, wait, who is this team? It was like that night and day effect, right? And I think for Dodger fans, we always like to quick panic. But, the bullpen has normally been our strength for the past couple years, right? And I think seeing the struggles early on is really kind of troubling for us, because it's kind of like, wait, you're our anchor. You're the one thing we can depend on. Obviously we've had discussions with closers and things like that, but the bullpen, like those arms that come in, it's like, oh, he's coming in, done. I saw a tweet and it was like, who broke Alex Vesia? It was like, no, he's fine, and obviously like you go through our ERAs and it's just not where our standards are, right? And the thing is, I think the whole NL West is struggling with their bullpen, if we're really being honest and trying to look at the whole big picture. But you have Evan Phillips with an ERA higher than 6. You have Bickford with an ERA almost hitting 4. And those are names that you're kind of like, well, I don't expect you to be there, and it's so early, right? And that's kind of what Roberts is saying. Like, it's early, like, relax, breathe. But for us, it's like, no, but if we need consistency somewhere, it's like, if it's not the bullpen, we need to be blowing out teams, by 8 runs or 6 runs like we did yesterday, or how we did in Arizona for that one game. And it's like, I want balance, and I think with all the changes that we have, it pegs the question, like, are the relievers struggling more, with the added pitch clock, right? With the fact that it's 15 seconds and 20 seconds and having that mental, because when you're coming in as a reliever, you're assessing the situation, you're looking at the player, you're trying to figure out your pitch, that's a lot to condense, especially when games are on the line, when games are tight, when you have runners on. It's a different mindset for a reliever. So I was pretty, surprised. I was happy we ended it on a high note. I mean, shout out to Max Muncy. But it was definitely one of those things where it's like, it's an adjustment period for all of baseball. We're just used to adjusting faster and not letting people see that we're adjusting in real time. And I think that's something that our relievers are going to have to work on, because we have some good arms, and, we're going to be shorthanded probably for the next month or so. So I think it's up to them to kind of get it going. We saw some good stuff from Phillips last night after giving up those back-to-back home runs the game before. And it's just the beauty about baseball. It's kind of like, it's such a short memory. It's like, all right, get over it. Go out there and do it again, because we need you.
Absolutely. Cody, what was your biggest takeaway from that road trip?
I think to go off of what the bullpen and what she was saying, I did think at the start of this regular season that the pitch clock was going to be a bigger adjustment for relief pitchers than it was starting pitchers. Baseball's about routine. These starters were working on the pitch clock. They were throwing their bullpen sessions with the pitch clock. They pitch every fifth day. As a reliever, you're not expected to do that, especially since there's not really any set roles, especially in the back half of the bullpen. It's kind of whatever the situation calls for. But to shine some light on some positives, the Dodgers can still hit. Besides for a couple of games where they kind of looked all over the place in Arizona, if our back end of the rotation could have held it down a little bit, we probably would have won that series or at least split it. But they can still hit. They have high barrel rates. They're barreling the balls up. A couple of Freddie Freeman's hits they're just hit straight at people, and they're kind of getting robbed there. But it's still early. I'll be one of those people. It's so early in the season. Baseball is not a game where I'm going to judge how the Dodgers are doing until probably about late May, early June. If they're still struggling in certain areas, then it's Andrew Freeman's going to have to work his magic and start fixing this stuff. But I think the next couple of weeks, we're going to start to see this team start to solidify, especially when we get some pitching reinforcements back with Gonsolin and Ryan Pepio.
So, Babyface, this team sucks, right?
I mean, I had them. What I had them 5-2, right?
Yeah, you had them going 5-2 on the road trip, and I know you were having a meltdown in Arizona. What was your takeaway?
I think. See, I don't know what exactly happened in Arizona. I don't know if they were exposed in Arizona or just Arizona did something. I don't know if they're going to continue to do that, but they need to adjust to what Arizona did. I mean, when they would get a guy on, walk or single, that runner was on second, like immediately. I don't know if that's something that teams are going to try and do on the Dodgers, and they're not going to be able to answer. I mean, they got to address that. That's one of the needs they got to address, right? So I don't know if that's just an Arizona thing. If that's Arizona's going to be, I mean, they're in first place right now, so it's working for them. So I don't know if other teams are going to try that with the Dodgers, but they got to fix that quick because I mean, you give up a walk and it's basically a double, right? With these guys in Arizona, so that had me a little bit concerned. Giants really didn't do it. They kind of, I saw a couple instances where they tried, they got somebody on and then they tried to get him over to second, but it didn't seem to work as well as it did, for Arizona. And then I think that just the running game with this new rule, right, that you can't throw over more than twice. I mean, I think the Dodgers got to take advantage of that, and and they haven't really been running. I mean, James Allman has tried, and I think he's been caught or he's been safe, but then they've been reversed a couple of times on him. So Mookie hasn't been running. Those are the guys I expect to kind of take advantage of it, and I think that's something they need to do to get those guys on, kind of get them over and and get those hits. I think they got to kind of go back to that small ball mentality because this new rule, I think you really got to take advantage of it. I mean, guys aren't even paying attention to the runner at first now. It's just kind of they have a lead like almost halfway to second and they're gone. So I think that's something they gotta work on.
It definitely calls you to be more strategic for sure.
Elisa, let me ask you this. Real quick, before I ask you, though, Babyface, to address, I don't know if the Dodgers roster is built for them to steal bases. We've talked about this before. There's guys on there that we think should steal bases, but I don't know if it's in their mentality to steal bases. The Diamondbacks, to me, have clearly bought in. And that to me is going to be what is the equalizer for them is, we may not be able to out-hit you with you guys, but if we get on base, look, Corbin Carroll, when he was in Dodger Stadium, stole 2 bases. He was on third base, and then all a little looper took, and then they scored a run. So I know it's really early in Arizona. It was a horrible series. I heard a lot of people say that was like when when the Phillies came in last year to LA and beat the shit out of the Dodgers, and everybody was just convinced that's it. It's over. I mean, why even finish the season? Let's just go home. I saw a lot of that on Twitter. Everybody's like, and guess what? The Dodgers were fine after the Philadelphia series. It just ended up just being, as Dave Roberts likes to say, it's just baseball. It was just one of those series where things just did not go right. But Elisa, are we maybe not giving the Diamondbacks credit? Like, I heard a lot of people going into the season that the Diamondbacks were a dark horse. It's not that anybody was saying, hey, the Diamondbacks are going to win the division or anything like that, but I heard a lot of experts say, keep an eye out for the Diamondbacks. And after that first series in LA, I was like, why is everybody so high on the Diamondbacks? Like, they're struggling. I mean, the only thing that they could do, I mean, they won games 2-1. The 2 games that they won 2-1. I mean, it's like, why? But then seeing them in Arizona, I was like, oh shit. So maybe this is what they're talking about. I mean, don't we need to give credit where credit is due? Isn't it not? It's not necessarily what the Dodgers didn't do. Maybe it's more what the Diamondbacks did do.
Yeah, I think, one thing about the Dodgers that I always like from the team is that they're willing to admit, like, when you got them, right? They're just like, yeah, they got us. They caught us slipping. They knocked us out, in that series. But then there's like, but we're going to see them again. And we're going to see, I think their next series, I think it's like in August. So it's a lot of time, until they see them again. And to Cody's point, like, that's the dog days of summer. That's when you're really going to show what you're made of in a season. And so for right now, it's like, it's early enough in the season. Everyone's semi-healthy, right? For the Diamondbacks, everyone's healthy. Us is a different story, but everyone's healthy for the Diamondbacks. You're supposed to be playing that caliber of baseball as you're kind of going in, And so for me, it's like, I give them credit because obviously they played a great series. They showed, their strengths in that sense. And I think we learn from everything that we lose from. And I say we because I'm speaking as a fan. Like, we tend to analyze the game and take what we can. Now, you're not seeing them for a couple more months, right? In that time, you're going to see other teams. Now, if I see you and you beat me with the same tricks, then it's kind of like, okay, now I have to like kind of readjust, and you really do have the upper hand on me because I don't know how to attack you. That's never been the team that I've seen. The Dodgers have always seemed to readjust and make changes and kind of learn how to attack what scheme or what players are at the plate. And to, Roger's points about stealing bases and your point, it's just, we have speed on that team. It's just a matter of letting them showcase it.
There you go. Cody, are the Diamondbacks legit, or is it just one of those things where we've seen it with other teams? They start off strong, and then as the season progresses, they fade.
So when I did like our predictions for my page at the Diamond Club, I had the D-backs finish in third. I think they're better than the Giants. I think they're better than the Rockies. I don't think they're going to blow you away and win 90 plus games, but you saw with the Phillies last year, they snuck in at the last wild card. I believe the Phillies only had like 86 or 87 wins. I think that's doable for Arizona. I think just with the way they play baseball and these new rules, like Roger said, they're a base stealing club. They're fast. They have multiple players that have Corbin Carroll-like speed. How far can that get you in a long 162-game season? I think if they try to play this way all year, it's not going to work. They're going to have to adapt and change. And the Dodgers have a different mentality where I would say, I'm very confident that they're going to make the playoffs. They're looking for more towards the latter half of the season. I think that's why you typically don't see like Mookie and all these other players being super aggressive in the first month or two of the season. And that could rub some fans the wrong way, but for me, I kind of understand it. Like you're playing a marathon here. So I do think the D-backs are legit. They've always been a thorn in the Dodgers side since probably like 2015. That's like, I believe Kershaw out of all the NL West teams, that's like his worst. He has like the worst ERA against them. Christian Walker has always had his number since he's been there in Arizona, but I still think we'll be fine. But I do think the D-backs are a legit contender in these next couple of years. So,
Babyface, I know that you had some concerns in terms of the end of that rotation. In particular, Noah Syndergaard looked great one start. Noah Syndergaard did not look so great the next start. Michael Grove has maybe looked good for 3 innings, but ever since then has not looked good. And look, the thing is I don't think anyone expected Michael Grove, to get a permanent spot in that rotation. Maybe he was just chalked up to a bad outing for him. That first outing against the Rockies, he was sick. He was pitching ill, and it was just one bad inning that he had. But all of a sudden, everybody's like, well, we need Tony Gonsolin back. We need Tony Gonsolin back. The end of the rotation, knowing that the Dodgers, I mean, look, it's the elephant in the room, right? You got Gavin Stone down there and you got Bobby Miller. I'm not sure that Bobby Miller is ready, but it seems like Gavin Stone is just mowing everyone down in AAA. How do you fight the urge to not bring up Gavin Stone too early?
And that's been kind of surprising. We're what, 2 weeks into the season now, right?
Yeah.
And don't you find it kind of strange that Friedman hasn't made a move? Like no type of move, no guy's been sent down. I mean, that's kind of like with
No,
Friedman.
I don't think it's weird because you just said it's 2 weeks into the season. They are one game out of first place.
It sounds weird when you say it out loud. We're like talking like we're a month. It's like it's been 2 weeks, and it's like, wait, what?
No, but my point is, Friedman is making moves like on the daily, right? Like I'm moving. This guy pitched too many innings last night. We got to get a new reliever. Like to me, that seems odd that there's been no. It's been 2 weeks and there's been no moves. I mean, that's just my thinking, right?
Okay, so let me ask you that because I was thinking about that after I was seeing the bullpen, and it looked like nobody in the bullpen was looking good. I mean, Elisa mentioned it early on. I mean, the most reliable person in that bullpen is Evan Phillips, and then he got lit up. And you're just like, what the fuck is happening here, right? Vesia has not looked good. I don't think Brewstar has looked good. There hasn't been, I mean, Andre Jackson looked good for 3 innings, and then the next time he came out, he got lit up. So it's not like, but it is like, so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, well, what can they do? Who can they bring up from the minor leagues, bullpen-wise? Now, we have old friend Victor Gonzalez, who I guess is looking good down there. You have Justin Brule. I mean, but who else can you bring up from the minor leagues that can help that bullpen? Who would you do? Who would you bring up?
I mean, those are the type of moves I kind of expect, right? Like, oh, this reliever went, too many innings this one day, and they bring up a guy like Brule, right? So those are the kind of moves. Like, as far as they're waiting on Grove, like, I mean, they're waiting for Pepio or Gonsolin. Now, Gonsolin looks like it's going to be early May. I mean, that ankle injury is taking a long time, and then
I mean, he is the Anthony Davis of baseball, I guess. Right? I mean, what he did coming off of that mound, I mean, did he get shot in the ankle? I mean, that must have been a really bad for him to be out this long.
I mean, yeah, it's taking a while. And then Pepio, right? I mean, that type of the Pepio with the side injury, those take a while too, right? So that's kind of, he's probably going to be into probably May till we get. So what do you do, right? Do you take a look at Gavin Stone? Gavin Stone, I believe, has had 3 starts. The first one was pretty shaky. The second one was better, and the third one was so. So, do you want to bring up Gavin Stone? I mean, I think it's still too early for Gavin Stone. To bring him. He's going to come in and if he doesn't do good, people are going to be like, oh, Gavin Stone, like he shouldn't be up. You're going to start hearing all that all over, right? And then same thing with Bobby Miller. We haven't heard much of Bobby Miller. They didn't use him in the game in spring training, so I don't think Bobby Miller's ready. So I think. Right now, they do have to just ride it out. Like we said, it's still early. It's 2 weeks in, right?
They are one game out of first place.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to ride it out with these guys, and I mean, the best scenario, right, is they're going to stay around where they're at. Playing 500 ball, for the next couple of weeks until some of these reinforcements come back in.
Elisa, like you mentioned, it's only been 2 weeks. What is your confidence in this, or in the rotation? Because look, after all the doom and gloom from the Diamondback series, where it was like, oh, we're gonna suck. I mean, what are we gonna do? All of a sudden, what happens? The guys that you can depend on, Julio shows up and just shuts them all down. Right? We get a win. Poor Dustin May seems to be the guy who's just not going to get any run support. Every year there's a Dodger pitcher that
Julio for a little bit. That was Julio for a while. He would get no run. All his games are just
no run support.
Yeah.
I mean, so Dustin May pitches well. Kershaw, I'm starting to think, guys, this is now the Kershaw that we're going to see.
How dare you?
What? but it
How
happens.
dare you?
Look, it happens. And I mean, it's hard to watch, right? Because you're so used to, hey, this is a guy who would go out there for 6-7 innings shutout. And the last two starts, that hasn't looked like the Kershaw that we've seen. Now, to be fair, the guy's going into his 16th season. So,
And you would rather have him on your team than not, so I mean, I'm a big Kershaw fan, obviously, public enemy number one, but I think I think with this rotation, it's one of those things where, again, we just have to keep saying it. It's just like therapy. It's 2 weeks into the season. It's 2 weeks into like you have to say it to yourself so that you realize that's reality and that it is still early. And it's you have to look at the facts. We're probably gonna be shorthanded until May. We have done more with less. There were times where we had weeks where we were just bullpen games all the time because our starting rotation was two guys. It was Buehler and it was Urias, and that was it. And so I think it's just a matter of understand these pieces are going to fall into place. Obviously, Roberts understands that it's early. He also understands that this game will not wait for them. He also understands that the Dodgers have a big target on their back. But I think the mentality has also changed slightly on this team. And the reason I say that is because last year we ended with a great record, broke records, all these amazing things, and then got bounced in the first round, won one game against the Padres, which was horrible to watch as a fan. And I think, at least for me, like being a fan and watching this game, it's like I just get hot at the end of the season. What scares me is when we get cold at the end of the season. My thing is like go through the ups and downs, go through the motions. As Cody said, like the Phillies snuck in with an okay record. I'd rather have an okay record and play in the World Series for a chance to win it all than have the best record in baseball and get bounced in the first round. And I think for the Dodgers, it's like, we're so used to being good. And so everyone's like, just be great all season and then go win. And it's like, that's not reality. It's just like us trying to analyze all. It's like, that's not reality. And so for me, it's just like, stay on course. We'll all this stuff right now, like we're getting ready, but it's really those late games that you have to get hot, those tough games, those when everyone's tired, people are hurt. That's when you have to grind it out. And that's when I'm really gonna be paying attention. Every time people ask me about the Dodgers, I always use this analogy. I'm like, look, this is a ship. I was like, we have Jay Roberts, the captain of the ship, or the captain of the plane, actually. And every time there's turbulence and he comes on and he's like, hey guys, don't worry. We're good. Please put your seatbelts on. It's like, okay, but when the stewardess start buckling up, oh, I'm scared. And we're not there yet. They're still serving drinks. They're still giving us peanuts. We're all good. Okay. The Roberts got this. Now, when they start buckling up and they stop serving the drinks, that's when I'll have issue. But until then, we're cruising. Just breathe, guys.
Cody, I know it's funny that I sit there and I talk about Kershaw as being a chump because he gives up 3 runs a game now, as opposed to a guy who had an ERA of 1 point something. It's alarming, but Noah Syndergaard, is this who he is, where we're going to get one good start and then we're going to get another shaky start? Did we just not have realistic expectations on Syndergaard? I mean, I know Mark Pryor is a great pitching coach, but can we really expect him to work miracles every single time?
I think with Syndergaard, it's a tale of 2 starts and how he attacked each start. So his first start in Arizona at Dodger Stadium against Arizona in that day game, he was a lot more sinker, off speed, trying to hit the corners. And then in Arizona, for whatever reason, he decided to switch it up and start going more fastball heavy. And Syndergaard said it himself, but he's not going to be the pitcher he was on the Mets, where he's blowing 99, 100 by guys. He said he tried to fix it this year. I live by Philadelphia. I've seen him up close when he was on the Phillies during their run. He knew he couldn't do it last year. And now I think he understands that that's just not who he is anymore. I say the same thing about Kershaw too. One of my favorite pitchers on the Dodgers from a couple of years ago was Rich Hill. And I think when you get to that age, you have to become a finesse pitcher. And Kershaw's already started to make that transition, which is where he's going more slider curve. If you got to try to, it's more of a mental aspect when you lose that velocity of your game. So Syndergaard, I think for his next start, it'll be important to see how he attacks those hitters, especially I believe he'll pitch against the Cubs in this upcoming series. Their offense is kind of up and down, but they've been winning ball games. I want to see kind of how they attack that. For Michael Grove, it sucks to say, but he's a AAA pitcher. He's kind of in that middle. He'll never really be a stay in the rotation. So when Gonsolin and Pepio come back, I'll be more confident. I also think the Dodgers are playing a little bit of trickery because, yes, those guys have injuries, and they'll probably be out to about early to mid-May. But I think in hindsight, that's good because these guys, Gonsolin we saw last year was gassed by the time the playoffs came. He pitched his most innings ever. I think for them, their idea, they're going to take their time with these injuries. If it takes until May, if it takes until late May, as long as they come back being the pitchers we know they are, we get them longevity. We get their good months later in the season rather than being burnt out. So I think I always, when I'm watching baseball, the first 2 months of the season, it's kind of a learning curve. You're going to be probably playing 500, and then you start to gradually get more and more wins. So I think I'm good right now. I think Syndergaard will stay in the rotation. Maybe in the playoffs, he'll transition to a bullpen role like he did with the Phillies last year. But I'm not too worried. I just kind of want to see their game plan his next start.
Well, you know what I'm really curious about is to see his next start will be at Dodger Stadium. And he pitched really well at Dodger Stadium. And there's a lot of people that tend to pitch really well at Dodger Stadium. So maybe it was just one of those things that, the D-back stadium is a hitter's park. And maybe this year it's just going to be Syndergaard is going to pitch really well at Dodger Stadium. Excuse me. And then on the road, he might be just a different pitcher. But his next start is going to be against the Cachorros. The Cachorros are coming into town, which means that old friend is also coming into town, Cody Bellinger. So, Babyface, I want to hear it from your words. Cody Bellinger will beat the Dodgers all 3 games. The Cachorros will sweep the Dodgers. It's going to be mass hysteria. Everyone is going to be mad that Friedman let Bellinger walk. It's going to be the revenge of Cody Bellinger this weekend at the Ravine.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, it's going to be nice to see Cody back, right? I mean, I've kind of been looking and seeing what he's doing, and he's off to kind of what Cody was kind of in LA start. He's not really tearing it up. He's hitting, I think, in low 200s, might have like a home run and a couple RBIs. But he hasn't been, he's not off to a fast start. I saw some numbers compared. Actually, that was a different bit. But I think if we compare Cody to James Outman right now, who are you taking, right? I mean, I think we're all going to say James Outman, right? Because James Outman's he's coming in, he's off to a fast start. So, if that's the trade-off that we look, okay, we let Cody go, but we replaced him with James Outman. I think so far the Dodgers have the one up in that category.
Elisa, how do you expect Dodger fans to treat Bellinger when he comes this weekend?
Well, I know how the girls are going to treat him. I will say that. I have so many friends that are going just to see Bellinger again. So, I think it's going to be mixed. I think he'll get cheers. I really do. But it's going to kind of be like Jock when Jock went to the Giants, right? It's like, we're going to love you your first at bat, and then we're going to boo you. You know what I mean? It might be like that love, hate, because you have to think of like the history of like what he was with the franchise and like everything he did and like all the awards and all the playmakers that he did. Obviously they won a title, and so I think fans won't forget that. Like, again, like Jock, ideally, like from a normal Dodger fan perspective, you go into the Giants, you're dead to us. But like every time Jock comes to town, even when he won with the Braves, like Dodger fans are rooting for him because that's Jock, that's still our guy, so I think that Bellinger will get, some love. And I think it might be that kind of sense of, they'll cheer him on for his first at bat. And after that, all right, you're part of them. They're not one of us. And I think if he does good, it's going to be one of those, like, I don't know what to do. No, I'm not gonna applaud this. But I think Dodger fans are they're gonna want to beat him, but they're not gonna hate him.
Cody, the Dodgers had to move on from Cody Bellinger, right?
Yeah. I mean, it sucks to say because I was a big Bellinger fan. I mean, you can see that
Yeah.
jersey right back there framed up. I got his bat, all his rookie cards. So I was a big fan. It sucks that it ended the way it did. But I even tweeted out the other day, how did James Outman not get at bats last year? And the short answer was Cody Bellinger. Yeah, he was a veteran. He's been in the major league since 2017. So he was obviously, no matter how bad he was playing, he was going to get playing time because the potential that they could have gotten if he figured it out is MVP caliber. And they weren't even asking for that. They were just asking for, we talked about it in the last time I was here. They were just asking for anything from him. And so they didn't get that. He wasn't going to be worth the contract that they were looking for. I don't think he was going to even stay long term, even if he was really good, just because of Scott Boras. So it's good we'll get closure this week and we'll finally turn the next page. But I've said to my friends, I got short memory. I'm seeing Jason Hayward, James Outman, even Trace Thompson with a couple of his games. I'm kind of just forgetting about Bellinger. I'm remembering the memories he gave, but at the end of the day, I'm rooting for the name across the chest, not on the back. So it'll be good. I think he'll definitely get a nice ovation. I mean, he won a Rookie of the Year. He won an MVP. He was clutch in that 2020 run, and he was a World Series champion. So it'll be nice to see him back, but I'm hoping for a sweep here. So
I mean, to what you just said, like when we were down in that series in 2020, he was kind of like, we're gonna win. Like he was like that anchor of like, you guys can all doubt us, we're gonna win, and obviously they did. So fans don't forget moments like that. Those are moments, especially when you bring back a ring, like you're always gonna have that.
Well, I mean, I know I'm gonna piss off all the ladies, and Elisa already said it, but I don't know if Kike can ever come back to Dodger Stadium because Kike was the guy who broke Bellinger. And I don't think we talk about that enough. We don't talk about that enough. Kike broke Bellinger. He's never been the same ever since that. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it because why? Everybody loves Kike. Everybody loves Kike. Go look up Kike's numbers right now and tell me, we could have him back on the Dodgers. Baseball is hard. It is very hard. So what is happening to Bellinger has happened to other Dodgers. And I think, Cody, you bring up a very good point. People are always going to look at Bellinger as a Dodger because of what he did. But it's just a perfect reminder of it's really hard. And those guys like Kershaw, the guys who end up being Hall of Famers, for them to be able to put up the numbers for as long as they have, there's a reason why those guys are Hall of Famers. And you mentioned, Jason Hayward. Jason Hayward, I mean, it's still only 2 weeks into the season, but he looks like a different player. Now, since we're talking about Bellinger and, well, he has 2 home runs, he's hitting .235. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. And I feel bad because he's a friend of the Carnesada and people really like him. But the Chris Taylor situation, I believe he's hitting now .091. And, in spring training, and it took me by surprise that Roberts had said, hey, the people who perform are going to get playing time. And it felt like it was really directed at Chris Taylor. But let me ask you guys this. Chris Taylor is getting paid a lot of money. I don't think Chris Taylor is going anywhere. And honestly, I don't think he's going anywhere because Miguel Rojas tweaked something in the game the other night. The Dodgers are very thin in the infield. It's the reason why Mookie Betts is playing second base. So, babyface, the saga of Chris Taylor, it's going to be rough. If he keeps hitting under 100, you need him because we don't have anybody else to play shortstop. Now, I know we've seen that Michael Busch the other day played third base. Again, this is a guy who's been moved around and played multiple positions down in the minor leagues. I mean, people were bitching and moaning about Max Muncy's defense in third base. I think it's really hard to move around in positions and still be good defensively. But in terms of the Chris Taylor situation, there's no way they're going to send him down, are they? They need him.
Well, I mean, you can't do anything with Taylor, right? You can't send him down or nothing like that. But I mean, is his neck still an issue, right? Like, is that one of the things that's still bothering him? That because I mean, Chris Taylor is striking out at an alarming rate. Like, I mean, it's close to 50% of the time, right? And that's usually
He was striking out a couple of years ago. I mean, the guy strikes out a lot.
I mean,
He has a huge swing. He has a very long swing. I'm very curious if he changed his swing to try to make more contact, if that would change anything.
I mean, I think though we're starting to see it though. I think now it looks like his primary playing time is going to be against left-handed pitching, and he had to come into the game the other night, right? Because of Rojas, right? And that, I think we mentioned this earlier on, that kind of scares me with Rojas because it's the second time like that he's gotten that cramp. And, I mentioned it before, he's getting up in age. When you're getting up in age, any little thing starts bugging you, right? Little cramp here, it's a lot easier to get those aches and pains when you're moving up in age. And like you said, they're very thin in that infield.
And also, Rojas was not meant to play every day. When they got him, he was going to be a backup. So this is as much as people want to hate on Chris Taylor and get him out of there, the Dodgers have no other options. I mean, Elisa, I think you said this, right? Like, we have to deal with this for 2 months because we're not healthy.
Yeah, and health has always been kind of like we don't talk about Bruno part of this team. It's like the health side, right? It's like we don't talk about injuries. We don't talk about when guys are going to come back. And the truth is that's been the Achilles heel of the Dodgers post the 2020 championship, right? It's like when you get to the end, you're running on fumes, like, and you're having these dramatic endings to series, but then it's like, oh, we got to go win another one. And we're running like on two arms. We're running on bullpen games. We're running on, guys that are dealing with groin injuries, hamstrings, things like that, who are giving it their all because they're going for a championship. But it's like that health bug has always been something that's kind of plagued the Dodgers a bit. But it's so funny because, being around my family, like they all have their guys, right? And for my mom, Chris Taylor is her guy. So right now that I was like, oh my gosh, she should be like, what? No, like she literally, my brother's girlfriend got her a Build-A-Bear and recorded her during a game when she was saying, "Go Taylor!" And that's what the bear says. Like that's literally what the bear says. So like she's a huge Chris Taylor supporter. And I think, again, a lot of, because of these injuries, right? We always live off the nostalgia of like, but Taylor had that big swing against this series. Well, Taylor had that big play in the out, like, all the way from left field to home plate to beat the Padres. Like you think of those nostalgic moments and you hold on to that because you're like, that's what we're waiting for. That's what we're waiting for. And that's kind of what keeps you kind of going because you play the law of averages. You have to when you're a baseball fan. It's like, okay, we're in a low law of averages. We're going to come and bounce back up. And I think for this team, it's just they're really good at filling pieces. And I know we haven't made any moves, we haven't pulled anybody up, anybody down, but we're really good at doing that to keep things steady. But the injuries kind of just keep mounting and mounting and mounting, and they take little pieces at a time that you don't even notice that they're gone until you step back and you realize like, whoa, like we're really low in the infield position. Whoa, we're really low at this. And I know that fans, have their thoughts on Muncy playing third. And, obviously it's an adjustment in general, anytime you switch positions. And I think, as you said, like Bush had played a little bit of third, and obviously like, you're trying to kind of see, it's not my favorite position for Muncy playing third. I think he's more of like a first, second baseman kind of guy. I feel like his strengths really shine there. But the positive note that I will say about this is that as many stars as we have on this team, as many egos as we have on this team, there's no ego, on their own, they're willing to do what it takes to win, and that's one thing that's been true about the Dodgers for a long time. You've seen other teams, you've seen them have guys that are really great and have big personalities, and they showcase that. Our team, they have that. Any guy can kind of go and be like a franchise kind of guy, but on our team, it's like, great, you want me to play third baseman? Sure. You want me to do this? Sure. Like no one fights against the grain. They trust Roberts. They trust what they have on the field. And they're like, if I have to do this to carry us over until so-and-so comes back, that's what we'll do. And that's the positive that as fans so early in the season, you kind of just hold on to.
Cody, how do we solve a problem like Chris Taylor?
We already mentioned it. Like, ever since he's been a regular in the Dodgers lineup, he has been one of those guys that strikes out a lot. And it's just the barrel of his swing, the swing path. It's a nice long swing, but when he gets a hold of one, just because of his swing path, he is able to barrel the ball, get some home runs, get some nice hits. But now we're just starting to see him just whiff on balls. And it seems like he's a little. I know in spring training, one of his earlier at bats, he got a pitch clock violation and then took a strike that was right down the middle and then swung right on top of it. And that just looks like a guy that's just mentally not prepared. He's had the injuries the past couple seasons. So he's probably just mentally going through it. He's probably, especially when you start off as slow as he is right now, even Muncy mentioned it the other day, gives a player a lot of anxiety, especially when he's not guaranteed playing time like he was in years past. But he is fortunate enough that the depth for the Dodgers, specifically at shortstop, is razor thin compared to everywhere else in the roster. I don't know if he fixes his swing. The Dodgers really need him to play somewhat of what the player he was until their Rojas is fully healthy. But like Roger said, we don't know if Rojas is going to be fully healthy for the rest of the year. He had the wrist surgery in the offseason. He had the groin injury, I believe, last week. And then now he has, I believe it's the toe cramp that I think also impacted him in spring training a couple times. You're going to get to a point where I think Freeman's going to probably pull a trade similar to what he did with Trace Thompson last year, where you're just going to have to look at because the shortstop for Major League, most of them are locked up and they're not tradable. You're going to have to look elsewhere, maybe see if there's any. It's very hard for a shortstop to get transitions. Like Mookie can play second, but he can't play short. Muncy can play second, but obviously he can't play short. Shortstop having an injury, it's really hard to adapt to. So I believe we're just going to hope for the best for Taylor and just hope for the best for Rojas's health. But that Lux injury is going to hinder us for probably the remainder of the season and maybe even next year as well.
Yeah, losing Lux was definitely a big blow. I think we all kind of felt it. He felt it, just like from the emotional side in general. Like losing that, given how young he was, and even like this, him coming in when he basically took over Kike's spot, a couple years back when he kind of came in and kind of took over in that more offensive, defensive way. So, I feel like we always have that one player that we lose, and then it's just like, oh, like how do we climb back from this? And to Cody's point, it's just like for us, we're in a position where we just have to. We don't know how, we don't know when, but we just have to.
Yeah, and I definitely think they're going to have to trade for an infielder at some point in the season because I'm expecting probably Jason Hayward to have a phantom IL stint eventually during the dog days of summer. So losing that flexibility, it's going to need to be tested. But I expect Freeman to work his magic and get something. I know a lot of Dodger fans and big media already picking names who the Dodgers could get. I know Tim Anderson's been thrown around out there. I don't think that's going to happen, but someone will come to the Dodgers to play middle infield. So,
well, Tim Anderson recently had some issue with his knee, so that's something to keep an eye on. All this is just really just made me want to drink. And now, thankfully, I think I can drink until the 8th inning because there's been reports that stadiums, because games are going so fast, are expanding their sales, their beer sales, until the 8th inning. And I want to give credit once again to Bleed Low's podcast contributor, Jason Barquero, who before the season started, with his big issue with the pitch clock is what it was going to do to beer sales. Jason had said if they're not making enough money or if they're losing money in beer sales, you're going to see the pitch clock go away. And so we're already seeing teams making these adjustments. What I found really interesting is a pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies, Matt Strahm, came out against these teams extending their beer sales into the 8th inning. I want to read his quote. So he said, "The reason why we stopped it in the 7th before was to give our fans time to sober up and drive home safe, correct? So now with a faster paced game and me just being a man of common sense, if the game is going to finish quicker, would we not move the beer sales back to the 6th inning to give our fans time to sober up and drive home? That makes sense to me. I mean, Babyface, I know you're not a drinker, but what do you think about these beer sales? And do you think it's finally because of any of the rule changes that have taken place this year for baseball? The ones that people like the most are the pitch clock. They like the fact that these games are shorter. What are your thoughts on what Matt Strom had to say about the beer sales?
I mean, yeah, I saw that this morning. I'm like, yeah, that does make a lot of sense, right? I mean, there's a reason why they would cut off the sales after the 7th, right? For that specific reason. And now you're going to extend it. Like, is that going to put people in danger, right? People are going to leave the stadium, heavily, drunk now or something. They didn't have time for it to wear off a little bit or whatever, right? So that does make sense. But like we did mention before, hey, how are the owners going to react when this new pitch clock starts hitting their pockets, right? And it'd be interesting to see it just in general, like beer sales, food sales, all the concessions, like, is that taking a toll? Like, we mentioned, when I went to a preseason game at Anaheim Stadium, I think I went to go get something to eat during the 3rd or 4th inning. I was in line for like 40 minutes. So I missed like 2 innings. So like all that stuff, like are you going to like consciously think, you know what, I don't want to go get food during the 3rd inning because I'm going to miss 40 minutes of the game. So all that stuff is going to add up. Like, but I think what he did say makes a lot of sense. And, I don't think they want to be putting people in danger. So I think that's something that they're going to have to revisit, as well, going forward.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Elisa, you're at the stadium. Look,
Yeah.
it's one of the things that we don't like to talk about, we don't want to focus on, but we see it. There are a lot of fans who get overserved. And I'm not saying they're getting overserved because they're at the game. A lot of these fans pregame it before they get there, and then they drink during it. But right. I mean, is it that much of a problem, do you think, at the stadium?
One of the things that I've noticed at games was that, to Roger's point, like they'll leave to go get food. Like I saw people going to their seats with a bunch of food, like in the 7th. And I'm like, wow, like you've been in line this whole time. We had a game end really quick, and I saw a group of like 4 guys with a michelada that was still full. And they're kind of like, what do I do? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, do I chug this? I don't want to throw it away. I just paid this much money. And so you kind of see fans like corralling and taking their time to leave because they're like, okay, well, let's walk slow so I can finish drinking this, And to, his point, it's like that's part of the issue, right? Because if you're buying your drink, let's say you buy your drink in the 7th, the game's going to be over in probably like 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes now, which is insane to think about. Before you had a solid hour. I mean, I went to an 8-hour game before. So it's like, I know that kind of that mindset. And the thing is, Kershaw had actually mentioned that in spring training, where he's kind of like, look, we're going to get used to it, all these things. He's like, but hopefully they sell enough beer. He called it because he knows that's where it comes from. And I know like we have all of our vendors and things like that, but when it comes to alcohol, that was kind of the main thing I was seeing was like fans still having full drinks. Fans just finished buying what they're going to enjoy. And then it's like, well, the game's almost over. So now what are you going to do? And have you seen Dodger Stadium? It's hard as hell to get out of there when you're sober, let alone, if you're a little tipsy and things like that. And so it pegs the question, are they going to stay? Are they going to let fans hang out? Obviously they do the post-game show for Spectrum Sports in LA out in Centerfield Plaza. Are you going to let fans hang out for a second? Are you going to maybe keep one food area so people can get regular food or regular drinks or water or whatever? What are you going to do to combat this, right? If you're going to, I personally don't think the right choice is to extend sales to the 8th. I don't think that's smart. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's safe. Doing it in the 6th, to Roger's point, you may not even get to buy a drink because you're in line. So it's also like, where's the trade-off there? So seeing kind of fans figure that out, I've seen so much chugging, like people just being like, well, like I'm not throwing this $30 drink away, so let me just chug it back. And it's just like, can you hang out before you leave though? So it's definitely a problem. It's something that I thought about. Like, that's the first thing I thought was like concession stands, lines, drinks, merchandise, things like that. Like my sister would be like, hey, like game's kind of slow, let me go to the store. She'll go to the store for an inning, come back with some, it's like all those little things end up adding up. So it's interesting to see how they're going to combat that.
Cody, are you secretly rooting for this because of your hatred of the pitch clock?
No. So, I mean, I've grown to kind of like the pitch clock now after seeing it in action. I kind of like almost every rule that they've implemented, especially with me being on the East Coast. These games don't start until like 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock here. So it's kind of nice to see I can like stay up a little bit late until like 11:30 and the game's over instead of before it was like 1 a.m.
That's so crazy. Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
But I've always been for like the food and drinks, especially when I went to LA last week for opening weekend. I'm always one of the guys that gets there early, gets the food, especially since I'm not from there. I wanted to try a lot of the stuff there. I try to get all my stuff done in the first couple hours, and then by first pitch, I'm just staying in my seat. Maybe I have to go get one more drink, but I've noticed it with other stadiums where I think Dodger Stadium's kind of nice with the fact that they have a lot of beverage coolers almost around the entire stadium where they're kind of like express lines. And I've been to Yankee Stadium, Citizens Bank Park here in Philadelphia, Baltimore. They don't have that luxury. I thought it was a lot easier, but extending it to the 8th inning is kind of a weird thing. But I kind of knew they were going to do that to begin with, just because, like Kershaw said, like they were going to less time in the game means less time people are getting food, drinks, merchandise that's selling around the store. So you read these rules on paper and you don't really see how they work out in action until we saw it in spring. And it's a shorter game now. Those games go by fast. There's times last year when we're down here hanging out watching a Phillies or a Dodgers game, and I could walk outside, flip a burger, drink a whole beer, come back in, and it's the same inning or the next half inning. But now I did that for the spring training game a couple weeks back, and I went to go check on dinner, come back downstairs, and the game was like halfway over. So the owners are going to want their money. So I think most teams are going to extend it to the 8th. It just doesn't seem right to me, though.
Well, I think one of the things that we can highlight is like the pitch clock and the shortened games. It's great for TV. It's great for TV, right? It's from a fan's perspective, watch on TV, whether it's East Coast time, whether it's, hey, I want to do something else tonight. Before I was like, what are you doing today? Watching the Dodger game. What else? Like, that's it. That's all I'm doing. Now you can kind of plan stuff after. So from a TV outside perspective, it's great. I think it's the fan experience at the park that is where you really feel the dramatic change of it. And I've seen fans, like my friends in TV love it. They're like, oh my God, we're in and out. It's great. And then fans are kind of like, I kind of planned like my whole day around this. And now it's like, it's over. And it's like, okay, so it's an adjustment from a fan going to the game versus watching on TV. If you're watching on TV, you love it. You adore it. Like all this action.
I've even noticed, just because like I'm one that goes to a lot of baseball games around here, and those tickets aren't cheap, and they've been going up for across the league. It's not just Dodger Stadium that they're going up exponentially everywhere. Parking, and a lot more stadiums are introducing more things that aren't related to baseball. Going to a game isn't just watching the game anymore. A lot of times it's a lot of places are building rooftop bars and stuff like that. And you're kind of losing money based off of that because the games aren't 3 or 4 hours anymore. And for someone that, like, you pay a lot of money for tickets, you pay a lot of money for the food, I wouldn't be shocked to see some teams have lower attendance just because they don't want to pay that. Especially teams that already struggle with attendance issues. Like Dodger Stadium probably won't be affected at all. They've been selling out for years now. But a place like Pittsburgh or even Tampa, they're good, but not many people go to baseball games there anyway. But that's something I would keep an eye out for the rest of the season.
It's funny that you bring that up in the sense of like, hey, they're going to be losing money. And before we wrap things up, I just want to get really quickly, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. There are talks of expansion. And that to me is crazy because I don't think baseball needs another team. We have too many teams to begin with. As much as I miss the Montreal Expos, we have too many teams because you have teams that are not trying, in my opinion. You have owners that are, as much as everybody hates socialism in this country, they have no problem with the owners in Major League Baseball taking other people's money and not trying to win. So there's talk of maybe Utah. There's talk of maybe Las Vegas. I mean, look, earlier this week, we saw that minor league teams outdrew the Oakland Athletics. When you have a problem in Oakland, I don't think you can be talking about expansion. Babyface, what are your thoughts on this expansion?
I mean, I kind of do feel there is a lot of teams too, but I think maybe not necessarily expansion. If teams that need to move, like, there's been talk of the A's going to Vegas, stuff like that, or moving a team like, the Rays. Like, Rays have been pretty good last, but they don't draw well, right? So do they need to move somewhere else, right? There was a talk of having them going to Montreal or playing half the season in Montreal. So maybe we'll see some of that. Maybe the Rays move to Tennessee, and the A's move to Las Vegas, and there's stuff like that going on, kind of just to get, where fans are actually going to go and support the team, right? Like you talk about teams that are like tanking, maybe like the Reds or the Pirates. I mean, I don't think those teams are going to move, right? Because they have pretty good, in general, they have pretty good, fans, right? In general, but I think maybe we'll see some of these teams like that maybe moving in the next couple of years.
Elisa, you applauded when I brought up expansion. So does that mean you're for the idea?
I gotta go Bayface. Like, I don't know if I want more teams, but definitely would want teams to move around, right? And because the thing is, with me, it's all about the investment. And the reason why I've been I'm all for Vegas having a baseball team, because the way that they've invested in their teams in that city shows. Like, even with the WNBA team, they built them a stadium. They promote them all over the strip. The Golden Knights, the Raiders, the way that they invest in their sports, granted with gambling and all those things, like it's a win-win for them. But to your point, it's like there's a reason why teams leave cities, right? Because it's like, you're no longer giving me what you need to give me. And the owner is in the business of like, you're not even making me enough money to make it worth staying there. I'm not even breaking even, which is why you have to move. You have to pressure the owners to be like, you know what? I'm losing more money than I'm making. If you're making more money, you still suck. They don't care. You know what I mean? But if you are losing money, or if you are not gaining anything and somewhere else is offering you the key to the city, you're going to leave, And I think that's one of the things that Vegas is trying to lure the Oakland A's out, I think, above anyone. I know that I know Salt Lake City is really trying to push for a team. I think they were looking for a team in Nashville, which maybe could work. I think Portland was the other one, North Carolina, like some other states, right? And so you kind of look, and I bring in like my football side, right? Because the NFL wants to expand too. Like, we already have 32 teams. So it's like, you really want to add another team to that? It doesn't feel like that. Like, there's already so many teams. They're thinking of international teams. They're trying to grow. I feel like baseball's already got that kind of covered where you don't need to really have that. But I think that if you move it, I think it's time that the owners of these certain teams have to step up and be like, all right, where am I going to go where I'm going to get investment? There's going to be something new and shiny. And I'm not a Raiders fan, but I couldn't wait to go to a Raiders game because I went to the stadium, and it's Vegas. But I want to go see what the competition's doing, right? Because we had just built SoFi here in LA, and it was like, well, what's going on? Like, I want to go. And so you bring in that as well. And so I think for the teams to expand, again, I think, he's right in the sense of you already kind of have your teams that are going to be in the contention every week. And then you kind of have those teams that are kind of just there. And that's not, I don't really want more teams that's what it's going to be. I want more teams that are going to be competitive. I want more teams that are going to shake things up, come playoff time, where it's like, you're actually making the top teams run versus like, oh, every year we're going to talk about the Astros, the Dodgers, the Yankees, maybe, the dark horse here with the Braves or whoever. It's like, I want I don't know, the Portland Beavers to come out and like win the World Series simply because they have someone that's going to invest in big players, big names. But I think the only issue I see is that everyone that's fighting for teams are very small markets. And I think Vegas is the only one that can compete as a big market. And it's like, look, if you're going to do this, if you're going to really expand, it needs to be a big market. And if you don't have that, what's the point? No shade to the small markets, but I'm just saying from like a new team perspective, you got to go big.
Thanks. I guess we won't be doing a show in Utah thanks to Elisa over here.
Well, you don't have to worry about drink sales over there, so I will say that.
There you go. Cody, you get the last word on this topic.
Well, I kind of agree with Roger and Elisa. I don't think the MLB is – I like how it's pretty sound right now. You got 5 teams, each division. Nice round 0 at the end for how many teams there are. MLB teams are pretty good spread out across the country between the Central, the East, and the West. Yeah, the California teams are a little bit crowded with Oakland, San Diego, LA, San Francisco, and even Anaheim. I would say realistically the A's are the one that are going to move. I think that's probably almost like 85% going to happen in the next 5 years. Vegas, I think, is probably the likely spot. And Vegas, it's Vegas, baby. It's big market. The A's are a historic franchise. They've been around since the dawn of baseball when they were the Philadelphia A's and then they became the Oakland A's. I think that's a great market for them. For the Rays, they've been talking about moving. The Rays, they just kind of need a new stadium that's closer to their city. And then they'll probably get more attendance numbers. And then the middle pack teams, like the Brewers, Pirates, and it's mostly the Central teams, they make enough money just to make small marginal profits where they don't need to leave. They don't need to invest highly in players, but they'll still either be competitive or around 500, except the Pirates or the Reds where they're super bad. So, but expansion, I think it's always going to be talked, especially with Nashville and all that, but I think relocation works better. And that would be my opinion on it. But I think Vegas is a really good opportunity for Major League Baseball, especially in the next probably 5-10 years. Gambling's going to be like sports gambling's already through the roof right now. I believe it'll probably be legal like federally almost across the entire country at that point because money talks. So that's where I would go with that.
Well, we'll see where Major League Baseball takes this. I want to end the show. As most of you loyal listeners know, we are big wrestling fans on this show, and we have upset one of our listeners. So I want to address this because we have not talked wrestling in a while, and it has really upset one of our listeners. So I want to apologize for that. So I want to take this time. And the reason why we haven't, you have to understand, everyone who listens to the show knows I'm a fan of the golden era, so I live in the past. So I go on Peacock and I watch all the old stuff. I don't occasionally keep up. But the way I'm going to make up for this is we have somebody on the show who actually went to WrestleMania, WrestleMania number 39, here in Los Angeles. So, Elisa, we need to hear, and I was not aware, Elisa, that you are one of us, that you were a wrestling fan. So, did you go to both nights of WrestleMania and give us our review of WrestleMania?
So, I didn't go to both nights. I did go to night 2 and actually had a Dodgers game I had to work. So, I literally worked the Dodgers game and then I went straight to SoFi Stadium after. My tia Chavez, she is a huge, she's bigger than me. I was definitely back in the WWF days, right? Before it became WWE. And I was a big fan then. I was a big Stone Cold.
You gave the right answer right there, by the way. The golden era is the only era that matters.
Undertaker was my favorite wrestler.
Well, that's more Attitude Era. That's more Babyface's era.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, that's the reason why I'm so aggressive most of the time. But I really wanted to see Roman Reigns. And I was blown away. One thing I will say about wrestling fans and WrestleMania was, man, there's people all over. Like there's no, it's like, oh, it's a kind of, no, it's like there's all kind of fans, different races, different cultures, different everything. And I felt a little out of place because I hadn't been to a live event in a long time, and like everyone knew the chants, and I'm just like, wait, why don't you guys practice? Like when, like I want to know, like let me know what to say. And it was so beautiful to see that, right? Like no matter what was coming up, the what is her name? I forgot her name. She's like the Belair, I think is right. Her wrestling match was so good, and the fans were so into it. And I was actually not rooting for her to win, but she won. I wanted Roman Reigns to win. He won, obviously. I was very excited. It was a spectacle. It was so good. The music, the lighting, the special effects, the fireworks in stadium. Like they weren't outside, they were in the stadium shooting off fireworks. And just like the natural reaction. I remember I went with my sister, and we were looking around. And I was like, I haven't seen. I'm in football and baseball. Okay, we don't see pure joy very often. It's like it's always up and down. And when I was there, it was just pure joy from people, like just pure joy, inner child. And I didn't think I was gonna get into it. Oh my god, I was standing up. I was like, "Get up, Roman! Get up!" Like I was screaming. I was like so like engaged. And then when I left, I was like, "Wow, I was really 9 years old again. Like that was fun, So. I got merchandise. I have my Roman Reigns shirt. Actually, hold on. I'm just go just to show you guys.
So for those of you that are listening on the audio right now, Elisa is getting her merch from WrestleMania to show us.
Right there. It's right there. And it says I was there because I was. It's one of those things like, look, my parents didn't have much when we were growing up, and there's no way we were going to go to WrestleMania. And for me to like just treat myself to it, it was one of those kind of like, you know what? It was so fun. It was so nostalgic. And like, if it comes back, like I'm going again. And George Kittle was there from the 49ers. He went to both nights. Snoop Dogg was there. He did the people's elbow. I mean, it was one of those things where like, it's so out of the box. It's so ridiculous. And you love it so much. So shout out to my wrestling fans. Yes, I'm one of you guys. So.
Cody, are you one of us, or do you poo-poo this whole conversation?
He's like, I'm done.
So I never really got into wrestling like that, but when I was...
All right, thanks for being on the show, Cody. Appreciate it. Thanks.
I flew there when it was going on, and it's funny to see like how many people of like different backgrounds are ecstatic for it. Like when I was waiting for my layover flight at LAX, there were so many people that were leaving from WrestleMania, and they had their shirts, their pins, all the merchandise they bought. So, and even just seeing SoFi Stadium that was packed with all the people there. So,
packed.
I mean, and Cody's from the home of ECW. I mean, where ECW like got their start. Like, you never heard of ECW back in the day, back there in Philadelphia?
Nope, never. I don't really watch wrestling. But I love that you guys all enjoy it.
I had older brothers too. That was also so like we had older brothers, and then Latino culture, the kids watch the kids. So we used to wrestle all the time and do all these things. So that was one of the ways I was able to bond. But that's kind of how sports happens, right? That's how you bond with everyone. Like literally, if someone cuts me off and they have something fandom that's related to me, I'm just like, you're lucky. You're lucky you have a Dodgers license player. You're lucky you have a Broncos sticker. You're lucky something. And it's just like you have that connection. But I was there, guys. I know for the people in the audio, you don't know because you can't see it. But I was there and I have proof.
There we go. Babyface, one last before we end the show. I know we've gone completely over, but I want to, I'm making a promise here. I'm going to make a more concerted effort to try to put at least a little bit of wrestling content in every episode so we don't go 5 episodes without discussing wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Billy. I mean, he sent us that message. He's like, man, I've been listening to like the last 5 episodes and not one mention of WrestleMania. WrestleMania was in town,
It goes Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, Fluffy was actually, he sent me a couple of pictures from when he was there, and I posted them on our social media, but we didn't really get to discuss it. I'm glad Elisa showed up today to kind of give us what happened.
So
well, I will say this, Billy. I know people in the WWE universe is what it's called now are losing their mind because Vince McMahon is back. And
Shane McMahon fought day 2.
It blew out. What did he blew out his quads or his calves?
I think he tore his quad or something.
Which is something his father did. His father blew 2 of his quads going into a wrestling match. So
we need a pitch clock because I could literally talk about this like for another hour. And Cody's just like stand there like.
We'll bring you on another episode to continue this, but I just want to say this to Billy, and that is Raw was in Los Angeles also. And while everybody was trashing Vince McMahon and saying it was bullshit that, what's the big dude that used to be in UFC? I'm blanking on his name.
Brock
Lesnar beats the shit out of Cody Rhodes and just absolutely just murders him on television. And everybody's like, the report is it was Triple H's idea. So there you go. All you current wrestling fans who think Triple H walks on water, that was Triple H's idea to bury Cody Rhodes. So that's going to do it for this episode. That's a lot of current WWE, but once again, a shout out to the real age of wrestling, and that is the golden era, to the great Macho Man Randy Savage. May he rest in peace. He is the tower of power, too sweet to be sour. And Hulk Hogan, the pukester. You will always be a humanoid, and I hope you enjoy living with the rest of the ham and eggers. So, for this episode of the Bleed Los podcast, yo ha sido su servidor, Juan Ramírez, de parte de mis colegas, Elisa Hernandez, Cody Snavely, Babyface. And remember, you can read Cody's stuff on Dodgers Beat. I'm sorry, I'm trying to rush the ending here because we went completely over. For the NFL stuff, follow Elisa. She's killing it on El Snap. Say hi to her at Dodger Stadium when she's hosting. Tell her you heard her on the Bleed Los podcast so we know. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast and to our YouTube channel. This episode of the Bleed Los podcast has been brought to you by betonline.ag, where the game starts. Nos vemos para la próxima.
Shout out Edge.